to our guests who are joining us this evening as Rishi Sunak takes over as the Prime Minister of Britain. Deepak Vohra is the former ambassador joining us on the broadcast. Maruf Raza is Group Consulting Editor at the Times Network joining us as well. Let me come to you first, Ambassador Vohra. Help me understand. Good evening to you. You're smiling. Help me. Yes, yes, of course, Rishi Sunak is British. Yes, he's of Indian origin, but he's British. He's a British citizen. But this is a moment where very many Indians are feeling proud today. And there's a certain symbolism that cannot be missed either, can it?
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure to be with you on your amazing channel to learn from you. No wonder you're one of the best in the country, and also from the other guests you have, whom I respect greatly. Well, at last, British flight PM 2022 has landed at gate number 10 in London. Rishi Sunak was the only passenger. Ma'am, the empire strikes back, whether he's British by nationality or whatever. The fact is he's one of us, and I am extremely happy that we now have a person of Indian origin who will attempt, I repeat the word, attempt to revive the British economy. He comes to power, there's an American expression, you'll forgive me for using it, when Britain is up shit creek without a paddle. It is one of the most difficult moments in British history in the last two generations. First, there was this circus clown chap called Boris Johnson or something like that. And then came that Lizzie Fussy, who did all kinds of funny things. And then came Lizzie Fussy's finance minister, Kamikaze Kwasi, and then her home secretary, who was ashamed of her Indian order, all kinds of funny things. But this man's immediate challenge, and he sounded very sincere, I was listening to him. You know, he's like the good son that or neighbor that everybody would like to have and that Britain so desperately needs. His immediate challenge, apart from putting food on British tables and gas in their heating systems, is to reunite his deeply divided party and rebuild its reputation. He has to pull Britain back. The country is bitterly divided, and he really has his task cut out for him. Spiraling inflation, high debt, low growth. I'm a development economist. I understand what this is. It hurts, man. It hurts when you don't have money, when you have to choose between eating, and recession is waiting at the door. Will he succeed? I'm not sure, but he certainly, as like hell, he'll make an effort. What are the lessons from this man? Give me a moment before you cut me off. Lesson number one, determination pays. Rishi Sunak has joined the ranks of Indian origin leaders like Kamala Harris in Washington, D.C., Praveen Jagannath, who I know well in Mauritius, Antonio Costa in Portugal, whose mother is from Goa, etc. So determination did get them there. He has promised to lead with integrity, professionalism, and accountability, all three of which were missing in his two immediate predecessors. And there are still many die-hard Brits who don't want 10 Downing Street to become 10 Browning Street. Lesson number two, it's the economy, stupid. The catchphrase during US President Bill Clinton's 1992 campaign to unseat George Bush. Does Rishi Sunak have a magic wand? No, he doesn't. But he has to do whatever he can to save whatever is left of Britain's crumbling economy. Lesson number three, consistency is good. He kept saying no tax cuts, no tax cuts, no comforting fairy tales. That seems to have struck a chord with people. And lesson number four, the British political system is based on deception, half-truths, and chicanery. All kinds of mean attacks will continue to be launched on a non-white prime minister. His wife's finances will be attacked, his religion will be attacked, his wealth will be attacked, etc., etc. These issues will not go away. But the bottom line is, we in India are delighted, whatever this man's predilections, his nationality, his preferences, that one of us is going to try and steer the ship of Britain, which is in turbulence, to safety on the shore.
Mr. Vohra, one of the things that has been under much spotlight is his wealth. His wife and his family's wealth combined, they are richer than the royal family. They're richer than the royals in Britain. So that is something that has been a headline in Britain all through. But hey, why is being rich such a bad thing? First of all. Secondly, can I just quickly come into Maruf Raza? Maruf Raza, Mr. Vohra says he's one of us. Is he one of us? And what does this mean for Indo-British ties? Because come to think of it,
Well,
Boris Johnson wasn't, as far as India is concerned, he may have been a bit of a disaster for Britain. His relationship with the truth may have been a little not very transparent. But as far as India is concerned, Boris Johnson worked for us as well.
well, I have a completely different set of views. I disagree with Ambassador Vohra that he's one of us. I mean, in as much as every man is one of us, because everyone came from Adam and Eve. But the fact of the matter is, Rishi Sunak is from parents who were immigrants into Africa. He was growing up in England, went to one of the top public schools. He was at Winchester, he was at Oxford, he was at Stanford. He has made his mark as a banker in the US. There was a question about him holding two nationalities when he was entering formal politics about 7 years ago. He has been Chancellor of the Exchequer. So some of the blame for the state of the British economy should go to him, because he was part of Boris Johnson's team, which tried desperately to revive the British economy. But the British economy, like most Western economy, is subjected to winds that are there in Europe, which is the Ukraine conflict, the prices of oil, inflation all over, and matters that Britain itself cannot control. He cannot control the state of play within the British stock markets entirely. He can bring back some confidence there if he doesn't do things as bizarre as Ms. Truss's finance minister did. But the other thing that we have to understand is that we should stop getting too excited just because he has Indian origins, his wife's father is the famous Mr. Narayan Murthy, that he's going to do any favors to India. In fact, India can now do more favors to the UK by giving Britain the kind of business opportunities that Britain needs to have in India to invest and make its economy grow further. As far as immigrants in the UK are concerned, I don't think Mr. Sunak connects with them beyond the fact that his color of the skin is the same as most immigrants there. He is different. He is as English as anybody else, except for the fact that he's brown. And I'll be as blunt as to say that one of the reasons why he didn't win the vote initially and they voted Ms. Truss in was the fact that he wasn't white enough for them. But it has come to haunt them. He is a very bright man. He's a self-made multimillionaire. I believe his worth is in excess of 750 million pounds. So that makes him close to a billionaire. And his wife's worth is separate of his own worth. And I think that is indicative of the fact that you can be a success story on your own with or without your in-laws. And finally, and most importantly, Mr. Sunak has to turn the British economy around. And the one way he can do it is to raise taxes and cut down frivolous spending, which Britain's economy has got used to over the years because they don't have a thrifty approach to life as we Indians in general have. So those are his challenges, and Britain is a power in decline on the global stage. He has to continue to piggyback right on America's tailcoats because that is the one way that Britain can still be heard. It is not going to be taken seriously in Europe after Brexit, and I don't think it's going to go back to Europe. So really, his challenges are economy and geopolitics and the investment opportunities that he can provide to others in the UK, and he can provide for British investors worldwide. That's where his India connection will count. But don't expect him to go out of the way to do any favors. Just like when Kamala Harris was made vice president of the US, everybody here in India, and I saw big smiles on the faces of anchors in India to say, oh, we have an Indian who's vice president of the US. Has she even presented one package to India that we can count as an initiative on her part that will do good to India or its women or its youth? No. And I don't think he's going to be able to do that. He has to rise up above that, and he's got to be counted to be seen as one of them in England. And I think those who work with him in Parliament and otherwise know he is very much a part of the Tory party. and he's going to do the things which are in line with the party's agenda. Back to you.
Absolutely. One of the things I noticed, because he made his first speech barely 20, 25 minutes ago, Deepak Vohra, is the austerity of it all. I mean, if it was a new prime minister in India, making that speech or being sworn in, oh my God, I mean, the surround sound would have been immense, the dhol, the nagaras, everything. So this was a fairly austere affair, I think, a reflection of the state of the economy that Britain faces right now. But very quickly, coming to the point about the Twitter war that has broken out here in India over Rishi Sunak's rise. I'm fairly certain you've seen it. The BJP and the Congress are warring over this as well. Look, this is a guy from an ethnic minority in Britain, a devout Hindu who's managed to reach the top in Britain. Can it happen in India is the question, and there's a ladai jhagda going on. Any thoughts, any views on that?
I'm delighted that one from our ethnicity, he's one of us to that extent. This character from Portugal, his mother is from Goa. He's as Portuguese as they come, sir. But he has an overseas citizen of India card. He wears his Indian heritage on his sleeves. Ditto for Pravin Jagannath of Mauritius. Again, totally dedicated to his country. Very proud of his Indian heritage. He too has an OCI card. I know that Rishi Sunak is supposed to have an American green card. I don't know if he has an overseas citizen of India card. If he asks, we'll give it to him. He's entitled to get one. Now, what you're saying about that, it was very low-key, it was very subdued. Of course it has to be, but that's part of British character. If you tell them that today is the 25th of October, the response would be dreadful, isn't it? And these guys don't know what happiness is. They don't know what positive energy is. But yes, he's there. We are very happy that a person of Indian origin has shattered the glass ceiling and that he has reached the top despite his religion, the color of his skin, his ethnicity, and the fact that he's self-made, as Mr. Raza said a little while ago, which is absolutely accurate. So now we'll see what he has to do. Of course, he's not going to turn around and say, I'm going to sell the United Kingdom to India. It's already been sold. There's very little that they can give us. The free trade thing, which, what was that woman's name, Miss Coward Man? No, not Coward Man, Brave Man or Braver Man or something like that. She went around saying that it's going to encourage Indian migration and British colonialism was a wonderful thing. My great-grandmother told me, oh, happy birthday if she told you. We don't even know if she was allowed to think independently. But now that free trade agreement, as far as I can see it, and I belong to the Foreign Service, we're in no hurry to do it. It'll take time. We have to figure out how will it benefit us. Ultimately, we're not going to do any charity for the Brits. They need us desperately. We don't need them as badly because we've overtaken them in terms of our economy, etc. But what does please us, that here is a person who comes in, who has never hidden his origin, and who has said, like a good, dutiful son of the country of his adoption, the country where he was born, that I will do what I can. I'll do good by the people of my country. That is the Indian ethos, ma'am. When we talk of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, it's not just an empty slogan. Some people might think so. The world is one family, and one of our family is now leading a country in decline, but it used to be once upon a time a very important country. That gives us enormous pleasure.
And you don't have any views on the Twitter war in India about if it can happen in Britain, can it ever happen here?
What can ever happen here? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I wonder whether, no issues. I'll just put this out for you, and I'd want to get in Maruf as well on this. There's a Twitter war that has broken out here in India over Rishi Sunak's rise as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. You know that, right? That, they're talking about this guy being from an ethnic minority, now being the Prime Minister of Britain. Is something unprecedented has happened there. Can it happen here? So that's the war that is going on. Any thoughts on that at all?
You are too young to remember this, ma'am. I'm 71. There was a time when a person, I'm not saying male or female, not even born in India, was within striking distance of occupying the position in India that Rishi Sunak now has in the United Kingdom. What do these people have to say about that? So, of course, it can happen. We came so close to it. Ultimately, the strength of any democracy is not your origin, but your character and your qualities.
Maruf, would you want to come in before I wrap this chat?
I couldn't hear Mr. Ambassador Vohra's response. I'm not getting the audio very clearly. But what I want to say is that Rishi Sunak doesn't appear to have come from the usual stock of immigrants. If you are, you don't go to Winchester College. It costs an arm and a leg. And you don't go to Oxford as a fee-paying student and then go on to Stanford. So he hasn't been from the stock that many other immigrants are, who've had to really struggle and rise up in so many ways, count their pennies, as it were. But what is important is that I'm pretty sure that he would have faced a certain degree of hostility from his peers when he was young because he was not white enough. I mean, Britain is a fair society, but it does that layer of differentiation between a white British and a non-white British runs in that society. I know that country a bit. I've been going there for 3 decades now, and having studied them myself, they are a fair country. They're willing to give you respect and opportunity. But if the choice has to be made between, classical ethnic Englishmen and otherwise, as we saw in the case of Liz Truss, the vote for her was a vote against against Rishi Sunak. But that vote, as the Economist said, has shown that she didn't have the shelf life of a lettuce in a refrigerator. And that's why they keep referring to the lettuce has outlasted Liz Truss. But now the challenge for Mr. Sunak is to pull up the state of Britain's economy. There's a lot that needs to be done, and he's not unfamiliar with it. He's waving in front of number 10. He lived for some years in number 11. That's the house of the Chancellor of the Exchequer. So therefore, he has to turn the country around. I don't think he can do what is expected by people on the street. So the challenge for him is going to stretch the pound as best as he can. But he cannot turn Britain's economy around without taking drastic measures. And those measures mean heavy taxes and cutting on spending, where Britain has traditionally taken for granted that they could. He has mentioned that in his speech. The NHS, the education system, all of that needs to be revamped. And Britain is now having to stare as a worst case scenario for their economy if things don't turn around in the next 6 months, because the price rise because of the crisis in Ukraine and the rise of oil prices has impacted UK, though UK does have its own oil resources from the North Sea. But everything else connected with the inflation that goes because Russia war is prolonging, and America wants to drive Russia to the ground. And therefore, regardless of the price Europe is paying, inflation is hitting everybody in Europe and therefore in Britain. But I think Mr. Sunak's other challenge is going to be to bring Britain back onto the world stage. Britain is pretty much absent from there, despite being a Security Council member at the UN.
We'll leave it there for the moment. If he lasts longer than Liz Truss in the letters, then he has 2 years to go. 2024 is when the general elections in Britain are going to be held. So he has 2 years to fix things. Can he? Is a big question. We'll leave it there for the moment. Deepak Vohra, thank you very much for joining us. Good to have you here. And Maruf Raza, always good to have you here on the broadcast as well.